Hello and welcome to another episode of The Modern Nerd. I'm Tim Poland.
I'm Dan Smirch.
I'm GJC.
And we are, as always, massive nerds. And as always, welcome back to this week's second part of the Rasslin episode. I had a blank there. I was choking on water. Everybody really give me a break, okay? Jesus. We had a bit of a downer
the
last
time.
We had a bit of a downer on the last episode. There were some highs. It was a really interesting retrospective on the current era and some of the stuff. So, check it out. But if you are a little bit more into wrestling and want to hear more about our favorite moments and get nostalgic with us and have some of your own favorite moments being brought back to mind, definitely this is going to be the episode for you. We're going to break it down for you. We've got favorite matches, favorite wrestlers, stables. We've got biggest surprise, the big oh shit moments. So we're going to be having some fun on this one and getting a little ridiculous with some of these moments. I'm not going to do the usual customary how you doing, what you watching, because not a lot has happened in that week between recording here, which was such a long time ago. Let's just dive into it before we get too carried away on anything else. Let's go. What do you guys want to start with? Wrestlers, matches? How do you want to do this? Any input?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I don't know. Let's go. Let's go down the list. Let's start with wrestlers, man.
Wrestlers, and who's in this order? We got Dan. Let's go Dan first because that's who's first on our little list.
I thought it was going to be Slice first.
Am I going to talk about all of them, or are we going to go around in a circle and talk about one and come back? How are we going to do this?
Give us your list, and then we'll dive into them. We'll each give our list, and then we'll go back and talk about it.
Okay. So this is like preliminary.
Hard to pick one. I had to pick different ones for different reasons. I will go backwards here. Paige is on my list, and it's funny. George was saying earlier, like, you don't feel obligated to put a woman on your list. Like George has made his list overall, and I gotta give it up to women, and I'm still a guy, and I'm still like thinking like male wrestlers. But the truth is, like as Tim said before in the last episode, women's wrestling is practically carrying at least the WWE right now. And to me, the women's wrestling stepped it up. You could say it was AJ Lee, like they were all like going after her and what she was doing. But to me, AJ was fantastic on the mic. Was a little bit lacking in the in-ring ability, in my opinion. She was still very good. But maybe I'm only able to say this because comparably to the people coming up, wow, Paige came in. Oh my God, just made everything like better. Like matches with Alicia Fox. Like we're all of a sudden like, no. Tim shaking his head. Those matches with Alicia Fox were good, and and both of them threw down. I have never rewatch, dude. Don't even. I will. Like Alicia Fox, for the first time in my life, I saw her throw down like Ring of Honor style. Like they were hurting each other, and I was like, where has this been? Paige bringing it out of her, man, and Paige continued to do that for a while, and like. After that, like you just saw women just then you got the 4 coming up, and they were just wow, they just kind of exploded. And I think personally, Paige was kind of like the first to kind of really get in there and to make me go, this is awesome. And I was so proud of her, and she's so young. And anyway, I'll just mention the others and we'll circle back around. But the next 3 on my list are Kevin Owens, kind of like a more central thing. I have a story about him in Ring of Honor, seeing him for the first time. Daniel Bryan, I've mentioned in the last cast. He was there. He was the WWE kind of rising up against the handpicked Roman Reigns and The Rock, which I have plenty to say about. So let's keep around the room.
All right. My late addition would be Alexa as well. She, for me, She can hold her own on the mic and it has some insane skills in the ring when she's healthy, which we can get into, and has some issues there. No particular order, because I think these three people all really hold the top spot for me, each for very different reasons. Maybe. Shawn Michaels, CM Punk, and Mick Foley are three of my absolute favorite wrestlers of all time, and for all fairly different reasons.
But fairly similar reasons too.
Two of them, yeah. One of them has very different. Foley has his own little reason why. Michaels and Punk are very similar.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I could go on those, and we will in a minute. I want to hear, George, who are your top wrestlers here?
So I will say that I went into it and I was like, I acknowledge Smirch's acknowledgement of his own bias, gender bias, and I think that shows a lot in general, not just for him, but for men in general, that they are aware. And I think that's a big up on him. So I acknowledge that, and like, good, I'm proud of you, because I think we all have that, like, as men in general, gender bias. So
yeah.
Going into it, I was kind of aware of it, and I just was like, okay, I gotta pick. Everybody filled out their list before me, so I had that advantage. So I was like, well, if those are the things that they picked out, but then I'm going to pick something. And the thing that I got to do was I got to see what they were going to do, and I didn't have to double up on it. So I had that advantage. But on my list originally is I had Paige, who Smirch has already talked about, and we could circle around to Triple H, who I talked about in great length last episode. And then Punk originally, but because Sir Slice already had Punk in there, I put my backup was Becky Lynch. So it's not to say I didn't have my own bias towards female wrestlers, but Paige was number one on the list because of the reasons that Smirch already talked about, and we'll go into in a bit.
Do a full podcast on these 10 wrestlers, right?
You really could.
Yeah.
These are like
they're
career defining and also era defining wrestlers. You know, each one of them defined their own era kind of wrestling for a long time, you know.
Let's chat a little bit about Paige, because I mean, she was one of my favorite wrestlers. Definitely
She's the
for
reason
a long
I watched
period of time.
NXT. She was the I never watched NXT until I saw this girl, and I was hearing hype about it. I started reading about her on Bleacher Report, because I was like, NXT, I didn't even like, it was not even I still thought it was the reality show that they were doing. I didn't even think it was like real matches or a TV show of its own. I had no idea it was a brand, like a real brand. You know, I just thought it was like main event type thing where it's like other matches of other wrestlers. I didn't understand the concept that it was like FCW turned into a brand, you know. And shout out to FCW, because that's what NXT is,
right?
You know, and that's where AJ came from, and that's where a lot of the younger wrestlers that we were talking about came from.
In my opinion, Paige was the first real like NXT star. Like
she is,
she is like the NXT launching that,
because
like,
even
the one like
even
she had buzz going into that.
Seth was already an ROH star. You know, Seth came into NXT, you know, into FCW. Yeah, he was in FCW, but they hired him out of ROH, you know, to come to FCW, and then it got rebranded into NXT. For those of you who don't know the history of it, it started off as Florida Championship Wrestling, which was the feeder training into WWE, and then they decided to rebrand it into NXT. But Bo Dallas, all those guys saw work outside of FCW before they were in there. Paige saw work from home, from like her own brand that her dad ran and her family ran. She was a local girl in England who like got her shot at WWE and who like got picked up, you know, and her family is well known in the wrestling community, especially in Europe, you know. So
they made a movie out of her. Yeah,
they made a movie out of her. She's like the history and the bullshit that she's had to go through for her career, for being a star so young and carrying it with such grace is amazing. And to this day, they still put her through a lot of BS, you know, and from like, just, you know, I hate to say it, like, and this is part of the problem is that like in this day and age as a superstar, and I said it in the last episode, you're expected to handle yourself on every single platform you possibly could. That is part of your job. is that you're like always on,
Yeah.
and because of that contractual obligation that you're always associated as a WWE superstar first, and that is your, like, you live the kayfabe life, it prevents you from living a real life in the way that other people would do on a social media platform, right? Everything backfires at you, and everything is always seen through the lens of WWE superstar storyline. So even your reality gets twisted because of the fact that you're under that umbrella. Even things like social media, when you're supposed to be trying to be like your escape as a genuine person, you just don't have that ability to do so, because the minute you do so, like, WWE will swoop in and prevent you from doing that. And that is the bullshit that Paige has had to put through and been through the last 2-3 years, when she can't even be on TV and wrestle.
Yep.
They're like, no, you can't be on Twitch. No, you can't say this shit on Twitter. No, you can't. Like,
exhausting.
It's exhausting. And the fact that she's handled it with such grace and humility, and just like, and not to mention all the other stuff, the non-PG stuff that's happened to her, and it's just like, so much respect and so much love for this woman, and she deserves so much. And that's what I love. Not aside from all the stuff that Smirch said, on top of that, it's just, even when she's not a wrestling, she's such a huge presence in this community. Like, to this day, anyone who's watched her, like, I feel like just feels like for her story and for her as a human being and where she is today. We want so much for her.
She was on
Paige.
She was on
she changed everything, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What
a real literal page turner, like literally turned the page on the next chapter of WWE and ushered in a new era, because I never saw anybody wrestle like so organically and so as if she was born to do it. Like,
she was, man,
effortlessly. She was born to do it. That goes, there's very few wrestlers that you watch and you're like, they make it look easy and it's so smooth. And the only one that I can think of is another person who was born to do it, Randy Orton. He makes some moves that he does look effortless.
True.
Moves that other people, but he just like, he was born to do it, and that is Paige in a nutshell. She was born to do this. Like,
there was Lillian Garcia, former ring announcer, had a podcast called Chasing Glory. And Paige was on it and told her story right after, a little bit after her struggles of her personal life, if we'll leave it at that, being brought to light, her behind the scenes issues and controversies that happened. She had a really good thing. If you want to hear Paige's story on Chasing Glory with Lillian Garcia, it's a very, you will cry. It's a very heartwarming, very passionate episode. If you want her story, definitely check that out to hear more about her behind the scenes and everything. But yeah, I mean, this woman can lay it down in the ring like it's nobody's business. She was first women's champion in NXT, if I'm not mistaken.
First
is that
NXT
correct?
champion.
And she then simultaneously technically held the Divas Championship before it got changed again. Yeah, she held them both at the same time. The only person to ever do that. I mean, her accolades would have just kept growing and growing and growing if she wasn't, injured. Unfortunately, she came back a little too soon from injury and was in a match with Sasha, and she just took a pretty standard kick to the back, and it gave her whiplash and put her out. Like that was
she
like
also
8 years
suffers
ago,
from
almost at this point.
scoliosis, which, if you don't know, it's a curvature of the spine.
Mm-hmm.
So she's had that her whole life.
Made it worse.
And it just made it worse. So
she could have been doing, Lord knows where she would have been, and hopefully she. I'm hoping, still rooting for like a Shawn Michaels moment of a Daniel Bryan moment where she can get a chance to come back. I thought she was coming back at the Rumble. Or
she does that every year. And it's not her fault, because everybody pretty much thinks it's going to happen every year, and then she just kind of eggs them on. But
okay, as we got a lot to get through. We got to keep this going. We're much on the page, but we got like 9 more wrestlers to talk about and many more moments following. So who's next?
Who can we do?
Tim, you want to talk about Alexa?
I mean, I
You
think
guys
she's
have
had
so
to.
many extra people. Yeah, let's go.
I know, an extra person. I'll do a quick one on her. I love her because I feel she has like the it package for
Total package.
when she's healthy, which has been an issue for her a lot lately. She's taken a lot of random time off for various injuries that have been plaguing her for a while. But she has the in-ring skills, she has the mic skills, she can lay it down with the best of them. And like I think she's had to overcome a lot because she's tiny. She's a really short individual, and when you have to go into a ring with Charlotte, who's like 6'2" almost, I don't even know, I could be wrong on that, but there's such a difference, and it's going to change the way you have to interact with people. Like you can't just do the same moves that you can, like if her and AJ had a match, that would probably be amazing. But like if she's going against, tall people like, like half the women on this roster are taller than her, she's got to really.
Charlotte Flair is like my height. Like she's 5'10". Like
that's tall for, I guess, that.
As compared to little Alexa Bliss, she looks very tall.
Yeah, Alexa's tiny. So, she's got to come in and do a lot more to really put up these matches. And it's phenomenal when she's done it. She's had some really interesting characters, whether you love them or not, with like when I don't even know what the name of her character was when she did that thing with The Fiend. What's his name? Bray Wyatt. She's good. She can make it all work. So I'm just excited that she's back in wrestling again.
Alexa, anything else you want to say about Alexa?
Nah, we'll keep them short. Okay. We've got a lot to do.
I just want a quick thing about Alexa is I want to say it's amazing. She was the last person or one of the last people drafted during the NXT draft or the WWE SmackDown draft. She was one of the last people. She got drafted like off the air, essentially.
Yeah. And she didn't even get the NXT championship, which she should have.
For the longest time.
Yeah. But she was the first person to hold both not simultaneously, but she held the first one to hold the Raw and the SmackDown Women's Championship.
Also supposed to be like one of the nicest people in the world. Like really, really nice person. Like, and a big Disney fan. Nice to hear. So a big Disney fan. So good for her.
Yeah. You want to talk about Becky? Seems fitting.
I will talk about Becky. And I will say, in many ways, Becky, I think a lot of us, when Paige was gone, was hoping that somebody would carry the torch. And luckily, there were 4 very great wrestlers who came up from NXT and got a wonderful opportunity, and who was also ushered in while Paige was still wrestling, and then obviously she got hurt. And luckily, we had wonderful wrestlers that carried the torch. But what's interesting is that when these 4 came up, and we were of course talking about Sasha, Charlotte, Becky, and Bayley. I think Becky was always the forgotten stepchild. She was not the one that people thought was gonna make it and be like the one to pick up the torch and carry and put the whole division on her back. And she was a classic case of just great talent being misused, mismanaged, not enough time. Was the SmackDown Women's Championship, and that was the thing that at least kind of put her over initially, but then never got the opportunity to do that. And you saw this woman who was amazing, and you started feeling for her, and there was this slow, steady buildup to the point where it just became a roar, where people are like, what the hell have you been doing to this girl? That she's been here this long and this talented, and you guys have not given her an opportunity, and she was getting just like cheated out of opportunity after opportunity. I'm remembering all this history of like Carmella winning Money in the Bank and like cashing it in, and Becky not being screwed out of it. Like all these, just you can't make this shit up how bad they screwed her over time and time again. Just missed opportunities for her to get a championship match or to get over on somebody, and just never giving that opportunity. And then the light freaking switch, because that roar from the crowd became so deafening that they finally noticed backstage, and they're like, we're gonna give you a shot. And boy, did she fucking turn it around. And she was like, "You're okay, so we're gonna make what," and this is once again WWE, kayfabe, storyline, real life stuff. You knew she was frustrated. You heard from things like behind the scenes stories about how frustrated she was and things like that. And it became such a big deal that they finally wrote it into the storyline. And it finally became a thing of real life drama backstage, becoming so big that they had to acknowledge it on screen. And that became the storyline of how she was getting screwed over and over again by people who were the closest to her, by these 3 other women, and by the people backstage, and how she finally was fed up and she was allowed to have essentially her Stone Cold Steve Austin moment, which is, I mean, for like, if you want to talk about mirror images, that is that black and white photo they show of her with that bloody nose. You couldn't fabricate such an amazing moment the way, and that is maybe the closest moment in the last 10 years that we've had to something that Stone Cold did in the Attitude Era. You know, like, it was perfectly like, it was organic. It felt organic and it felt amazing. And to this day, it gives me shivers. And that's why I still have faith in this company, is because she's still around, you know? And so, and obviously she was gone for a while because she started family, and, you know, we love her and Seth because the two of them are amazing together. And I just, I can't go on. It's somebody else.
I am not a fan of Nia Jax, and how it's not really her fault, but they pushed her really too fast, too soon. Not very talented. Thank God Nia Jax punched Becky Lynch in the face. Like, who knows what would have happened? Like, hey, at least something positive came out of the recklessness behavior and wrestling ability of Nia Jax. Like, you know, besides all her actual other injuries she was dishing out. Like, would we have gotten a Becky Lynch rise to stardom without another Nia Jax fucking up again?
That was her attitude.
Punching her in the nose. Like, probably not. Like, I don't think we would have. And so I'm kind of weirdly grateful. So long, Nia Jax. Like, nice to know you, but like, I'm glad it happened, because like Becky Lynch deserved it just as much, if not more. And I'm glad she got the opportunity, because she's done more with it than most.
She's a superstar.
She's good, man. I'm really glad she got her shot. Like, I'll be honest. George was talking about how she wasn't really connecting like early on in NXT. I was part of that group.
Me too.
I was generally unimpressed. Like, she clearly showed wrestling ability, but just things weren't like, especially because it's really hard when you're being compared to the likes of Charlotte and Sasha and Bayley. So when there's that comparison, you can't help but draw those two. And to see that happen in front of you, you're just kind of like, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure about this, but she got her shot, and she's arguably doing better than any of them. I think I like to think she's been given free reign to.
She has been given free reign.
Yeah, like cut her own promos, and that's. I mean, look what happens when you do that.
I know.
Let more wrestlers do it. Oh my god.
Not all of them. Don't let all of them do it, because I've seen some train wrecks. But
I love it. Like, she's a chameleon. Like, she has continually evolved her style, her look, and like like always changing and always looking that much sharper and cooler. And I think that's something her and like Seth are very good at, and the two of them obviously are great together in working that. And so I think they understand that a character has to develop and change and be able to shed skin and put on a new skin, and like continually moving forward with the character that you're continually building, you know, and have a new look, and that's, I mean, it's hard to say nowadays. It's like, you want to play it safe. They're scared, you know. They like,
they can't all be Randy Orton, John Cena wrestlers. Like, you gotta start taking risks.
I'm going to do this because the more I stare at this list, I realize what George was getting at with my top 3 favorites. I am going to tell you why these 3 people are my favorites, and it was weird because I wrote this, and then George, when you were like, "Oh, because it's all the same reason why you like them all," I'm like, "No, it isn't."
It's the same reason.
Oh wait, it is all the same fucking reason when you think about it. Sort of for me. Michaels, Punk, and Foley all came in 3 different eras and kept me loving this industry for all sorts of reasons. But really, kind of when I break it down, and George, I want your opinion on this one. For me, they all kind of at one point in their career were basically the underdog, the unsuspecting, non-characteristic wrestler. You know, like Vince's wrestler is Hulk Hogan, is John Cena, is, you know, these giant huge people, and Michaels really was like the first person that was kind of the first person that held that belt that was not larger than, I mean, he was larger than life as character, but he wasn't a massively huge 26-inch pythons, you know, whatever.
He was in great
he was
shape,
amazing.
though, don't get me wrong.
Mike, oh, he's in incredible shape, but he's Mr. WrestleMania, you know, I mean, like he's the show stealer. Like he is one of the most entertaining men to have ever stepped foot in the ring, hands down. And Punk was basically, well, Foley, let's go Foley next. He was basically the same thing. I mean, he was not in shape any way you put that. Like he was one of the only people to like submit like a, hey, here's my backyard wrestling tape, and actually make it. Like this dude was jumping off of his roof and like doing all these dumb things, and ended up becoming like a hardcore legend, and like putting on some really entertaining matches. Even when he wasn't doing his hardcore stuff, his style was so different than everybody else's, especially at the time, that it made him stand out. And for me, it was a connection of being like, well, anyone can do this. Like, I want to do this. I want to watch more of this guy. He made me want to be a professional wrestler for a period of time. And then Punk came around, who, just his name, CM Punk, like, most people think of punks as like outliers and like anti-authority and not clean cut, and you know, that kind of stuff. It's if you look at like the classic era, that's really what it was. And you look at him and he's full of tattoos, and you know, like he's straight edge, which is wonderful, but like, you know, he is very anti-authority and not the person you expected to hold a belt for over a year and a half. And like, you know, was like, for a period of time, if it wasn't for Vince's disdain for him, like he would have, like, he held the industry and you know, held the reins for the championship. But it was really a lot of like his reign that kind of pissed me off about the WWE behind the scenes, because he was the champ, but he was never once in like 18 months the highest billed person on whatever show he was on. He was never the last match of the pay-per-view. He was never the top star of the pay-per-view. It was always Lesnar or Taker or Cena or someone like that. So, but his ability on the mic is almost second to none. Maybe, you know, Rock can beat him on the mic, but the way, the realism and emotion that he brings into all of his promos was insane and incredible, especially his infamous pipe bomb. But like his storytelling in the ring is like, it's very Shawn Michaels-esque. You know, he can tell an emotional tale and make the other person look good, no matter who he's wrestling. Like, I'll go back and watch those matches against The Rock at Rumble, and like, Rock was terrible, but like the match actually is not the worst match on the card, not the worst thing I've ever seen, because Punk carried it and made it look interesting and fun.
Oh, Rock was done at that point. He wasn't a wrestler anymore.
No, but like, to be able to then do it and have someone across from you be able to tell a story and still make it emotional, like that says a lot to Punk. So those three people are like, will forever be on the top of my list. There's a variety of others that'll go up and down, but those three are the top.
I think
three
your Slice, if I had to summarize your list, is, I think like yours is like, your list is all personality. Like, it's 100%. It's these people, not saying that they couldn't wrestle, because they're all great wrestlers, but like yours is like people whose personality just outshined even above their own in-ring talent, to the point where Vince could not, like, he couldn't ignore it. Vince is probably so lucky that Shawn Michaels stumbled in and like was in his face so much, and like realized how big of a superstar he had on his hands. It's probably one of the luckiest things that's ever happened to him, that this thing fell into his lap. And that he was such a big superstar, Vince just put him on the announce table all the fucking time. Like, that's how big of a superstar he was, you know? And Punk, same thing. Had a run when he got hurt, he had a run as a commentator on Monday Night Raw, you know, because they're like, how can we keep this guy on TV now that he's hurt? Okay, go out there and talk with Michael Cole and make fun of him all day. You know, like, personality.
It's easy to make fun of Cole.
Yeah, personality. All character and personality. That's your list. Smirch, summarize your your list for us.
Well,
Talk
it's
about
so
those
funny.
people.
Yeah, and I just want to. It's hard to not talk at length about each of these guys. Michael's
did it.
arguably maybe people would say if you asked good old JR who his favorites were, he's phrases it differently because I don't know if he wanted, but he says the two people who outstood everyone else were Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels in terms of everything, storytelling ability. It's hard to not. Shawn Michaels, I mean, he kept that company afloat. He was the guy, and it's so funny how George talks about how he kind of fell into Vince's lap, like I could imagine Vince back there very reticently being like, this fucking pretty boy with no muscles. I don't know.
Well, fucking shut up.
And he's like, to think Vince reticently putting this guy to the forefront, who is to this day maybe the greatest in-ring storytelling performer of all time is just hilarious. Like, have you learned nothing, Vince? Like, you see what happens when you gave a guy a shot. You created maybe the greatest performer of all time. Like, and you could say the same thing about Punk and Foley. These guys don't look at Mick Foley does not look like a wrestler at all. Like, how is he? You look at him, you're like, this dude's a wrestler? And he has some of the greatest moments in wrestling of all time. And it's because of the people want to root for the everyman. They don't always want the super muscle dude who's there to at the day. And it's important. The people's voice matters. And Tim's kind of 3 right there is a very big summarization of that. Anyway,
tell us about your list, Dan.
All right, my list. So we got the guys. It's hard to pick individuals. So you kind of got Kevin Owens, Daniel Bryan, and The Rock.
Compare.
I mean, Kevin Owens is more of just a personal pick. He's kind of he's still around. He's kind of this guy who really hasn't gotten his due, in my opinion, in wrestling and WWE. He got it a little bit, even though it was literally Triple H handing him the title, which I think they did on purpose, which I've got mixed feelings about. But I mean, I'll never forget the first Ring of Honor show I was at with you guys. We kind of see this dude come out who doesn't look like much of a wrestler, has a little bit of a gut, and who moved like the fastest. Was probably the fastest dude wrestling that night, seemingly. And I'll never forget. George talks about it all the time. I know I do. I'll never forget. He's kind of standing on the top rope, way more comfortable than any man of his size should be. Jumps, just flips around, lands so he's facing reverse and does this moonsault. A move I don't even really see that often, let alone from a gentleman of this size. Oh. And they were chanting Mr. Wrestling, and I'm like, no shit, man. Mr. Wrestling, Kevin Owens. Like, how do you do what you do? And he's just such a joy to watch, and he's so passionate on the mic, and he's incredible. Big ups to him. I hope he gets his due. So Daniel Bryan, another product of the fans getting tired of the seemingly handpicked chosen one by Vince McMahon. They kind of, there's the montage. We talked about how great some of the edits were, and one of them was a monster, and that WWE created this monster by not giving people like him a shot, and it culminated in maybe one of my all-time greatest WrestleMania moments, personally, of WrestleMania 30, Yeselmania, as shall never forever be known as, Daniel Bryan winning the titles in both of them, and beating Triple H. God, the same night, going on to be in this match. It was an amazing moment, and I was a Daniel Bryan fan, for a long time. I was like, who is this jabroni, prancing down the ring going, yes, no one's as excited as you are. And he stuck with it. And it became the loudest chant for years after that. Just The Power of Yes by Daniel Bryan. Like it's amazing.
Don't forget The Power of
kind
No,
thing.
because
The Power of No was never as powerful because people wanted
Yes.
it back, but it was he was so committed to a single word. I've never his hair is flapping. No, his hair is flapping in his face. He's so into it. It's Dana Bryan's a great example of just committing to whatever you have to do. The shenanigans him and Kane got up to in Team Hell No to this day are some of the greatest ones in television. Like so entertaining, so committed
Rock
to
and
this
sock
seemingly.
worthy.
I am the tag team champions.
Yeah, I'm the tag. Like what? This is stupid, but it's hilarious. They're so committed. I've never seen Kane more.
I've never seen Kane have so much
Dude,
fun.
Dude, Kane was having the time. I was so happy to see it, man.
Me too.
Kane, a guy from the Attitude Era, coming back and having this kind of like unlikely duo. You gotta love it.
Like a revival of his career, you know, like because we all written him off.
How much fun was that to see? That made me like wrestling, and I've missed moments like that. I'm gonna save my last one.
Well, do it now.
No.
There's no one left.
Yeah. There's Triple H for George.
Oh, I already talked about him in the last podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can...
No.
It's gonna be hard not to talk at length about this. All right. The Rock.
2 minutes Turkish.
2 minutes Turkish.
5 minutes
going
Turkish.
over Turkish. You will be hard pressed to find someone I have such a strong love-hate relationship with. The Rock. You know, so someone that's not on any of our lists is Stone Cold Steve Austin, which is kind of crazy because in many ways
Stone Cold George Austin.
It's we're kind of like these lists are kind of like people who I think made the most impact on us. Stone Cold Steve Austin is arguably the biggest star in WWE of all time. I don't know. You could make arguments.
There's a
Stone Cold. He had it all. He was the everyman, but he was also muscly, and he brawled, and he drank beer, and you loved him, and he got it. He nailed it, and you hear that glass shattering, big pop every single time. Like he had his thing figured out. He got injured, and this guy, formerly Rocky Maivia, now The Rock, turned heel, part of the corporation, coming up, really good on the mic. Comes up with a catchphrase every few weeks that stuck, that people loved. I loved him. I thought he was the man. He did it, and not even like the greatest wrestler, you might say, but he was so good on the mic. And we were all in school like, "What is your name?" It doesn't matter which. Like it's so iconic. And you hear me, if you're a frequent listener, you'll hear me rip on The Rock because I don't think he's done as good of an acting job since his character, The Rock, on WWE, and he is now a professionally paid actor. What are you doing, Dwayne? Like, we can see you commit to this role, and he's just kind of out there like,
one of the highest, like, made the most money in the last few years that anybody
he just got dethroned as the highest paid celebrity in Hollywood.
Wait, who's dethroned him?
I don't know, but he's the second highest paid celebrity in Hollywood as of last week.
He makes so many movies and makes so much bank every single year because the man is a machine. I will say that, dude, the man is a machine. Like he
workhorse.
He is a workhorse. Like he lives, breathes, works.
To Dan's point of him not being the most talented in the ring, there's one thing, because he was the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. His matches really were electrifying because he was so animated. He was so vibrant. His character came through into the ring. Circa Undertaker. Undertaker's character came through. It wasn't as like wild and crazy. It was somber and like dark, but like that's what he was. He came from a different era, a different style of character wrestling. Whereas, the 80s and early 90s, that's what that was. That was character wrestling. And it was, over the top characters. And then we got, the Attitude Era still had some, but it was mostly, like over the top moments and chaos really is what it was. And Rock really solidified a lot of that. He was the bridge between the two worlds, him and Taker. Yeah. Of characters.
I mean, fans were upset when he went Hollywood. but it gave him
Paved the
a
way,
great
dude.
chance to turn heel again and do some more great work. As where stars are truly born in wrestling is when they're given the opportunity to turn heel and really unleash what they have to say on the mic. And from there, you can. I mean, the New Day wouldn't have been the New Day if they finally were allowed to like turn heel and do some amazingly entertaining things. And you could say that about most superstars. Roman Reigns didn't fucking find his footing until he was finally allowed to turn heel. Before that, it was just the same shit. And The Rock is no exception. Maybe the foremost example. He was able to do. I mean, and people, you could hear him, especially when he came back from doing whatever the fuck, Tooth Fairy. I don't know. People were like, he was cutting promos and like you're booing him, but you could hear like large amounts of laughter. He's good at what he does, and I miss that. And I not only do I miss him committing to his role, I miss seeing The Rock in wrestling. You say, well, Dad, actually, The Rock has been in lots of things. No, he hasn't. No. Dwayne has been back a lot. I want the sunglasses. I want the $500 ridiculously like floral shirt. I want committed. I want the catchphrases. I want the attitude. I don't want like this cheesy Rock. No, you're not. I haven't seen The Rock in a fucking decade. Show me The Rock.
More than that.
Anyway, I love The Rock for who he was, and I just miss it. And that's all that is. That's all that is.
Nobody insults anybody like The Rock.
Dude,
you know what I mean?
Dude.
The jabroni beating, pie eating, like he was just so ridiculous and it was amazing. It was fun.
Okay.
All right. So
let's move on.
The way we're gonna break down our favorite matches.
These are gonna be fast.
I don't want to dwell too much on these.
Yeah, we'll just talk about it real quick.
Yeah. Mine's a walk. Mine goes through the eras, which is funny now that I look at it. Because you got old school WrestleMania 10, Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon in the first televised ladder match. All the rest of them had been like on the road or something like that.
The amazing IC title.
Match. Yeah. And it was a cool story because it had been done, but like, Michaels had to leave for bad behavior. Basically, he was being a little shit and getting into some problems, drugs and otherwise, and and he left. But he never gave up the title. He told Vince, he's like, no, I'm not giving up the title. So they put a new title on Razor, and then when Michaels finally came back, he's like, well, no, I never gave up the belt. So then, all right, well, you the new, and so then they had the unification and became, Shawn didn't win that match. Razor came out on top of WrestleMania 10 as the Intercontinental Champion. But it was an amazing storytelling. You can go on YouTube and there's like a 5-minute clip of those two sitting down now-ish and having a conversation. They rewatch the match and talk about it. And it's really fun to watch. I watched it like 2 days ago. But it was some of the most pure wrestling. Like the things they did with that ladder was awesome. More to come on the ladders, but like that was what made it all. That was just like some fucking ladder they bought at like
it wasn't even a tall ladder
or whatever. Yeah,
it wasn't even ridiculous. A tall ladder. It was just like a regular short ladder.
It was cool.
It's not the same size as the ladder is now. It's like maybe I would say like 60%, 70% at best, the same height as the ladder they use now.
And especially once you get to the later ones, which kind of becomes my second, is going to be the first ever was it the TLC? It may not have been a TLC match. I may be getting this one confused, but it was the tag team ladder match.
Yeah,
it was a TLC match though, wasn't it? I'm getting confused now. It was WrestleMania 2000 and it was the Hardys versus the Dudleys, and I believe it was a TLC match.
Oh, probably it had to have been at least a T, if not a L and an L, but probably no C.
It was definitely ladders.
Always used.
Ladders. But it was, that match was insane. The ladders were like 20 feet tall and it was nuts. And I think George has one of the later ones of the Hardys and everything, but like this was one of the earlier ones that really kind of did it before it became its own pay-per-view and everything eventually. But Hardys and Dudleys threw down like no two other teams have done prior to that very moment in history. It was high flying, intense, and like to see the Dudleys do these things, they're big dudes. Like they're
dudes.
climbing these ladders and flying off of them and throwing things, and it was a hard fought match. And these people's careers have been shortened, or lives have been shortened, because of these types of matches. And for me, that was what wrestling was at one point, was just, I want the most insane, crazy, over the top shit, because I had no emotional attachment to them outside of the ring, so I didn't care. I was like, they got hurt. But like now I'm like, oh God, don't do that, you're gonna hurt yourself. But
don't die.
yeah. But then later, my third one is, and I wish I remembered which NXT takeover this was. I have a terrible memory, and ask anybody. But it was Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Wrestling himself, Johnny Gargano. I want to say it was their second bout, NXT Brooklyn 2, maybe. It was one of the most pure wrestling matches I have ever seen in my entire life. It was emotional. It was high flying. It was impactful. It was crazy. And they didn't even do a ton of like high flying spots, but like the pure raw talent. I mean, these two were friends growing up, so the chemistry they have in the ring is almost second to none. It's like Owen and Zayn, you know what I mean? Like it was absolutely a thing of beauty to watch if you're a pure wrestling fan. Story aside, which it was a very emotional story, the soap opera coming into it, and it bled through. It was one of the best storytelling in ring I've seen since one of George's favorite wrestling matches. So
it's always great
I'm
to watch
leaving
two
mine
people
short.
who know each other so well wrestle.
Oh yeah.
Or like brothers, essentially, who came
like
up together.
Matt Hardy and Edge had some amazing matches, just one-on-one, because it was such an emotional. They've known each other and wrestled so many times, and it became such a real moment in the ring. That's really what I love watching now about wrestling, is like those pure raw wrestling moments, which is, it's phenomenal. If you get a chance, go back and watch those first few NXT pay-per-views, start to finish, wall to wall. The best. Like, you'd watch those on a Saturday night, and then like the next night would be Sunday night pay-per-view, and you're like,
we didn't even
really
watch it. We didn't even want to watch it. We played like we put the pay-per-view on, and we play like video games, Smash on the side or card on the side.
I started watching NXT after. And but you guys were all doing that. So that's basically me stopped watching it with you guys, because I was just tired of feeling like this just doesn't compare. And so I started watching it after the pay-per-views, and it worked. But yeah, you can't.
The main roster should be the warm up, and NXT should have been the main pay-per-view.
The height of NXT.
Well,
it really was. So those were my favorite matches of all time.
Birch go first, or I go first?
You go ahead, George. You go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna be pretty fast because I feel like we're running a little long.
It's hard not to talk about.
So number one on my list, and this is not in any particular order, but number one on my list is like Undertaker's, of course, is famous for the streak at WrestleMania. He went for the longest time without ever losing, and the list of people who he's defeated at WrestleMania is like a Hall of Fame hallway of his own. Pretty much all of them are Hall of Famers. I think most of them are.
No, not all of them,
but a lot of them are. So but the one that I have picked out is HBK WrestleMania 25. It's the one that he retired on. It's his second time in a row facing Undertaker, which was the first time anyone had ever done that. The history of the two men together coming up is essentially almost like parallel story, kind of in the way that a lot of other people came up together. You could say like Rock and Stone Cold, Cena and Randy Orton. Like, there's that person in the company who you kind of came up with that has been sitting across from you in the locker room this whole time, and those two were those people. Like, it was those two. And to see Shawn with his story, having been gone for so long, and then coming back and getting a second chance at a career, and then finally able to end his career as Mr. WrestleMania, like on the stage that was always meant to be on, is like the emotion of that. And these matches, both those matches were amazing. Like the previous year and this year were amazing. So yeah, there's
And they were old dudes at that point.
Yeah, but they still put on an amazing match.
Stole the
just
show.
The emotion of like the ups and downs of the roller coasters of both those matches were, and of course, I'll throw in even Hunter had a hard time having to follow that, because he had to follow that immediately.
Damn good job of it though.
But he did a great job too, and obviously ended there. So in many ways, my match is WrestleMania Undertaker matches. But okay, next is kind of building off of what Tim said. Edge and Christian versus the Hardys and No Mercy was the first ladder match for a tag team championship they've ever had.
That might have been. Yeah.
It was the first pay-per-view that they ever had. I remember recording it and then watching it at Tim's house together. I think we bought the pay-per-view.
That was when we had to buy pay-per-views.
We bought the pay-per-view and then I recorded it and then I ran over to Tim's house and we watched it there, I think.
Cassette tape over
cassette tape pay-per-view. Because you had to watch it live and then we didn't want to lose it after paying $50. It was $60, I think, after taxes. And you had to call up the phone number and
$50.
It was like $50 to watch a pay-per-view back then,
Insane.
And so
insane.
It was so expensive, and so I didn't want to I would pay $50 and not have it. So of course I recorded it. And we rewatched that match over and over again, I think. Just randomly threw it on because we had it on the cassette. So just so amazing. And then finally, Punk versus Daniel Bryan, Money in the Bank. There's two other pay-per-view matches they were known for in that area. And that was also Over the Limit was a very good one. But this is the better one out of the two. Is the Money in the Bank. Yeah, this one is amazing. The Money in the Bank is just amazing. And this goes back to what Slice said earlier, which is two wrestlers who know each other very well, who had parallel careers almost, who were both in almost the same exact situation in WWE, and then finally both getting over and finally both getting their their shot, and knowing the history behind the two of them, and then finally getting the opportunity to have them be in the storyline when they were both at the top of their careers, kind of was I mean, you couldn't ask for more. They wrestled and it was fucking poetry. And those are the moments that Tim was talking about that you live for, because it was effortless. It looked like it was almost like a dream. There was not a moment where you felt like there was a pause. It just was smooth. It was beautiful. It was two people who knew each other, and it was a choreographed dance that I don't think I've seen since, and a lot of great wrestlers have that chemistry, and it's so rare, and when it happens, it's absolutely beautiful. It's why we love wrestling.
Submission showcase.
It was a clinic, in the words of JR, running a fucking clinic on wrestling, and that's what the two of them are. Two men at the height of their careers who were masters of their craft, who knew each other like the back of their own hands, who've been wrestling together for years on and off of WWE, putting on just a showcase, and it was all right, that's it. I'm done. Slice.
Right,
it's good. That was good.
Okay. So I'm gonna take most of my time here, and I'm acknowledging that. That's fine. My main pick, my all-time favorite, is Bayley versus Sasha. Bayley versus Sasha for the NXT Championship. What's there to say? I've rewatched this match probably 4 or 5 times, and I cry each time. It is a beautiful moment, not just in wrestling, but not just in women's wrestling, but in wrestling history. That for me, and the call of the four coming up, the 4 horsewomen coming up and staying together after that match is a beautiful moment, and kind of realizing it's here. Women's wrestling is here, and it is going to stay with these 4 tremendously talented superstars. That match is an emotional roller coaster, culminating in one of the craziest reversed top rope Frankensteiners from Bayley. Just absolutely, nearly breaking Sasha in half. It's impactful, and I'll never forget that match. It was just such a great W for Bayley, who we all wanted it to happen, but just for these 2 friends who have come up in this industry together and are it's changing the women's wrestling one match at a time every time they get together. What an amazing moment, and I was glad to have seen it, and I'll watch it again. And that's my main pick. That's the one that sticks with me. The second one, okay. So The second one I have is more of an honorable mention, just because it's more of a great experience for me personally, and it's a little bit of a random one. And George, are you okay with me telling the full version of the story?
I'd say no.
Keep it PG-ish.
Okay.
Whatever.
Okay. So I'll just say, I'll. It's fine. I have to say that.
That's fine.
I took an edible for this journey. I went with George to watch. George, for my birthday, got me tickets for NXT TakeOver Chicago, which NXT, this was in its prime. It is like every single match they're throwing down. I'll just say that this was, I was having, it hit me very hard, and I was having a time. And just, they had this, by the way, was the night of the Velveteen. Where's the Velveteen Dream, by the way? This is the Velveteen Dream's debut, and this is, they kind of had his match before, so because they were going to air it on the following NXT on Wednesday. And we were all kind of like, what? But he obviously ended up being really great. They changed the mat and changed the ring skirt, and this guy gets in to start sweeping. And because Chicago wrestling fans are the nuttiest fans in the world, next to maybe UK, who will just chant for anything, start chanting for this seemingly poor sap in the ring. It's just three guys in the back. We're like, sweep, sweep. Before you know it, the entire Allstate Arena is just going, sweep, sweep, sweep. And this guy's in the ring like, I'm sweeping, like I'm doing, what do you think? It's like, and he rolls out of the ring. The crowd boos like Eva Marie was cutting a promo. Like they're just like, boo.
Wow.
Boo. And this guy's like, what? And he rolls back into the ring and starts sweeping. The crowd goes wild. The crowd is loose, like, yeah, sweep. He's like, and sweep, sweep. And I am laughing so hard during this.
One more sweep. One more sweep.
One more sweep. I am laughing so hard at this. My mouth did this weird thing. I pulled like a cheek muscle. And I had to, and for the remainder of that night, if I was laughing or smiling too hard, I had to like hold my cheek so I didn't like smile too hard. And that sort of set the tone for this evening for me. I was having quite a time. And by the time this Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate championship match rolled around, I was, oh my God, what those guys just threw down.
Unexpectedly,
like,
did not think that would be the match of the night.
Like a dragon attack or Phoenix like fly something like to the outside of the ring with the way other dude was standing, like just crazy stuff. And it's so sad to see Pete Dunne's name changed to Butch on their main roster. The Bruiserweight, a great alias. He's just, anyway. I'm not gonna go down that road, but it was quite a time, and I will never forget it. Thank you, George.
They threw down, dude.
They threw down. That whole match. That was the same pay-per-view takeover that Ciampa betrayed Johnny Gargano.
That was the one they lost their final tag team championship.
Yeah, and that was that. What a symbolic night. Anyway, so that was my story.
Okay.
What a time.
We have top oh shit moments. And I see Dan has some in here. I don't know what the hell that is, but
I will tell you. I'll keep it short.
George. I like
Want me to go first? Mine are fucking hilarious. So I'll go first. First, number one oh shit moment. This wasn't even that long ago. It was when the Bollywood boys were still around and working for Seth Rollins as his goons, I think it was Jinder Mahal.
No,
it was Jinder Mahal. It was when during RKO, Randy Orton versus Jinder Mahal storyline, and he had these two Bollywood boys behind him who were like short little dudes. And Randy Orton has this thing where he like picks people up and drops them onto the announce table. And one of them, he like literally dropped the guy on his head. He folded him up like a lawn chair and dropped the guy on his neck and bed onto the table. And it was so bad that Randy broke character, looked at the camera and away from the action and was like, ooh, like, I didn't do that right. Like you could see the grimace in his eyes because he realized he might have just like permanently hurt this poor man. Luckily,
killed him.
Yeah, he might have killed him. Luckily, the guy is okay, I think, but I don't think he came back after like a couple of weeks. Okay, so I was like,
Randy Orton made. He's just like, oh my god!
Look this clip up. It is famous. Look this clip up because it is famous.
Oh,
all right.
He's just like,
yeah, because it is famous, and because it's like one of those moments where like that was not scripted and that was not planned and it didn't work out well. It was like. Anyways, second one, Brock Lesnar moonsault. A man of his size and his shape and his dimensions has no business being on the top rope and trying to do a moonsault so badly that it looked like it might have broken his own neck. It looked like it hurt him way more than him. Like he did it way more than anybody else.
So many times before that. When he was in FCW coming up, he did the moonsault quite a bit. Like, or the
shooting star press?
Moonsault, the shooting star press. He did that a lot. And it was crazy that he could do it. Yeah. And then in Mania, he puts it on the big stage. Oh my god!
And looks like he might have broken his own neck. It was so scary how bad it was.
He knocked himself out.
Yeah.
He's admitted that.
Yeah,
which is even funnier. You see him like limp over and toss his arm over Kurt just to pin him. Oh my god!
I also throw in a Shane O'Mac. Shane O'Mac in there just because Shane O'Mac getting dropped on his skull trying to get thrown through the glass.
King of the Ring.
That's it. Yeah, I'm done. Okay, just moments that you know that are not scripted.
Moments. Well, that
look like they hurt.
And that's Shane O'Mac is my top. Oh shit! It should be called Holy Shit moment because the crowd would chant "Holy shit! Holy shit!" I was at this pay-per-view and I can't remember if it was a Backlash or an Unforgiven. I think it was an Unforgiven.
I think it was a Backlash.
Well, it was. I remember specifically. It had those hooks. It would like the around the Titantron. It had the giant.
It had
hooks
the thing that looks like it was swinging. Yeah. It's a backlash.
Yeah. Oh man, it was like one of my earlier pay-per-views that I went to as well. And it was him versus Big Show, and he had Test in his corner. Helping him out, and it was a no holds barred match or whatever. I don't remember the specifics going into it, but Shane climbs the entire length of the Titantron, which is like 60 feet, 70 feet in the air. Like that thing is up there, and he's standing there, and you can see him like in his head being like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god," and he just goes. And just leaps and drops an elbow, and like he hits him. He got it like right here with everything, but he just plummets. And like I don't care if there were airbags under there or whatever. There was like a layer of plywood. Like they had the whole thing put out pretty nicely, and it was seeing it live and having that like excitement of the crowd. It was just like one of the most insane holy shit moments I've ever experienced. Probably mostly because I was there, and it just like he's climbing up. Everyone's like, "What the fuck is this guy doing? Like, are you kidding me? Like, he's climbing. He'll stop halfway up. He's not. He went all the way up, and it was like the crowd was chanting before he even jumped, and then we popped so loud. One of the highest pops I've heard in person from myself. It was awesome. That's all I'm gonna say.
March.
Okay. I'll keep this quick. I took up most of my time already. So we God, talk about Shane. One of the only person I think storyline wise to willingly jump off the top of the Hell in a Cell. You had Shawn Michaels dangling and then fell a little bit short of a fall. But the original, Mankind being tossed off the cell by Undertaker. Holy shit.
Yeah.
What a fucking and
it wasn't graceful either, you know.
It was not. He hit like at the top of his shoulders, you know, basically. And that's a big man falling a lot of feet onto a table. I can only hope
there's baby boy.
And then Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, a tooth coming through his lip
That was the second fall. Though.
So I mean, the following moment, the one to follow that, which wasn't supposed to happen, learned a number of years ago. Oh my God, Taker choke slamming him through the cage onto the mat. Holy shit, Mick Foley, dude. Oh my God. And continuing on what should have been like a it's time to end the match kind of moment.
They tried to. They, honest to God, tried to end that match. And Mick was
what
like,
a fucking legend Mick Foley was. To this day, I still can see it happening in my head and still thinking to myself, even as a kid, when like
broken in half.
Even as a kid, you're kind of like, these moments don't quite land. But even as a kid, I was like, that probably really hurt.
Yeah.
that you don't see that kind of thing happen every day. And big ups to Shane McMahon, who also jumped off that thing not too long ago. Was had some great moments as well. The next two, I'll go real quick. Just Dolph Ziggler cashing in. What a moment! We were all, me personally, rooting for Dolph hardcore. I thought he had it. It's hard. How often how loyal you want to stay? How many times do you want to get let down? We all thought he had it. We all thought he could be the next big guy. People have argued maybe not the mic skills. Fine, whatever. He had it in the ring, and he could have been an amazing champion. Wasn't for
very Shawn Michaels
Jack Swagger.
Yeah.
And just that moment when he finally got it, and he's literally, his promo backstage is, "It's about time," and I'm like, yeah, it is about time. And I was really happy for him, and I'm really sorry things didn't work out for him because he was really awesome. And my last thing is just
what is this,
dude? You guys got so you're aware of a thing called a shoot match where shit gets real and people start actually fighting. This is the first and foremost example of that. The Great Antonio versus Antonio Inoki.
I thought they said Loki.
No, you have to. The best way to watch this is to watch Bill Burr talk about it, and while he provides this hilarious commentary. It's just, I'll check it out for yourselves, but I'll just say that the Great Antonio was this very out of shape guy that did not work with. He did what he wanted to do, would no sell most moves. And Antonio Inoki was like this star, and got real fed up with this Great Antonio's bullshit and really started hitting him. And it's a good amount of justice. Look it up. It's worth a watch. Shoot matches are some of the funnest things to talk about, and they're the most fun. And this was like the first and foremost example of a shoot match. So anyway, that's that.
That was, I do remember this. Man, I keep turning red. What is happening here? Is anybody seeing that? There we go. Okay. Top WWE debuts, because I'm not going to do all the rest of them. There's far too many to remember. But WWE debuts. George, do yours.
Paige. That's it. Paige. That song hit. We've been watching Paige. I told you
it was night after Mania, right?
So night after Mania, we thought Paige might premiere at Mania, but no, actually, I don't even think we thought, because she had kind of was in the height of her NXT career. Kind of, she was the champion. I actually did not expect her to debut so soon. I thought they would. She was so young too. Like Paige had just turned 21, I think, and like they were like, yeah, we'll call her up in the next year or so and she gets more time in NXT. Now she's in the prime of her career in NXT. There's no reason. We made this title just for her, pretty much, and she's been doing a really good job with it, and like wrestled some amazing pay-per-view matches as well for them. And so there was no reason to call her up, and it was a genuine surprise. And I remember watching it because you always expect things to happen on the Raw after WrestleMania, and and then the fact that not only did she come in, but she also came in and won the Divas Championship from AJ the same night, and you saw the raw emotion in her face, of like just the sheer surprise of it, like, and those were real tears of joy for somebody who, honestly, even though she was so young, had been wrestling almost as long as some people who were in the main roster who had been wrestling in WWE that long, since she was like 14, over a decade's worth of work. So there you go.
Yeah.
Paige. AJ Lee. And just for fun, I will put my title on the line.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
That was good.
Yeah, AJ Lee.
And when the music hit, and you're just like, what in the world? Like, And it's funny also because AJ and Paige are like good friends in real life, having trained down in FCW together. So
big ups to AJ Lee for making
big
that
ups,
moment
dude, and
that
for
much
like
more
for
impactful.
doing it, and for like and just big ups to AJ.
Who was
I
it?
mean, she made that moment that much more impactful. I appreciated her for that.
Selena Vega and Florence Pugh.
Yeah, who ended up recreating the scene for the movie.
Vega doing an amazing impression of AJ Lee, sounding just like her. Big ups to her as well.
Yeah, who's also good friends with AJ in real life too.
Love it.
My top debut was, well, I think everybody's top debut is something else, but Kane for me back in the day, because it was a different type of debut. It was one of the original, it was because it was a vignettes debut. It was like you kept hearing, not vignettes, but you kept hearing them talk about like Kane's brother and Undertaker's brother, and like all these things about this past of the brother who was hurt in a fire, and like all this stuff, and like it just kept building, like old school storytelling style. And then you get him coming down to the ring at, I want to say it was a Hell in a Cell match, and he just rips the door off and goes in and just screws up the whole match for the Taker. But it was, I mean, to see this giant, massive, mask-wearing, muscle-bound red character with the hair, and then being accompanied by Paul Bearer, who's someone who has been associated with Taker since the beginning of time, and like, it just was such an impactful moment. As a child, I was a kid at this point, because that was like early mid 90s, something like that. Like, that was really back in the day. That was, maybe it was late 90s. It was super cool to see that, because it was like a demon. It was the big red machine, the demon himself coming to life finally, and it was done right, unlike so many of these like vignettes and characters that are built up now, and then suddenly Fandango, and you're like, what the hell is happening? Like, you build this up for so long, and then you just,
but so many superstars that debut now have that kind of build up, and he was like the original. I feel like the one that successfully did it, and almost every big superstar has tried to do something kind of like that. It's very rare that they jump in. Like,
Taz tried to do it.
Yeah, a lot of people have tried to do it.
That was close. I was actually almost going to say Taz. I
Taz's
really
debut
enjoyed
was
the debut.
good.
It was great. It was diminished by the rest of his career in the WWE. If he had maintained the career he had in ECW, it would have been awesome.
Yeah.
But it was not. He copied someone else, who I will now casually ask Dan, who is your favorite debut?
I'll take the microphone. My favorite. There's no comparison in my mind. Y2J. Break the walls down. Oh my God. Well, I did not get to watch a lot of wrestling as a kid. My parents didn't have cable, and we were in Colorado, and I'm watching it by myself, well aware of who Chris Jericho was because of things like WCW and NWO Revenge, and to see his name pop, there's like, and The Rock is out there. Oh my God. He comes out and he says his piece, and The Rock is like, wait, what is your name? It doesn't matter what and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm witnessing like a legend.
I think that was one of the first times Rock said that too.
Was it? Even better. What a moment to have with maybe the biggest star in the company at the time, and he didn't quite hit his stride till later, but that was an amazing. Just the anticipation, seeing this, like, I think, did we see it was Y2K, and then right before, did we see it change to Y2J? And you're just like, huh?
No, it was just a countdown clock.
Okay, just a countdown. And what was amazing is this was like in the early days of SmackDown, which we all knew SmackDown became a TV show because of The Rock. Like, it's his show named after him.
Welcome to Raw is Jericho. What a goosebumps,
so
man.
Good.
And to exchange with one of the greatest on the mic. Both two of the greatest superstars on the mic of all time. To have a little exchange for his debut. What a moment.
Jericho's one of the greatest. I'd say all around, Jericho for me would beat out Rock, because he's better in the ring and just as good on the mic.
I don't know about just as good on the mic, but he does. I would say he beats him in the ring.
depending on the era in which he was.
Yeah.
His taunt
he
move,
was prideful.
his taunt. He's the only one with that taunt move. You could pin someone that he's like his pin move and is a taunt move and
Noise.
WCW versus NWO,
Yeah.
and he goes like, "Hey," and he flexes and steps on you, which is like something he did when he was in WWE.
The
So
lion
good.
heart, the lion
Oh,
salt.
all of it.
Yeah.
The Lion Tamer.
Lion tamer.
Before it was, because
Well,
that's what it was in
Vigo.
WCW, I think.
Right.
One of them, I don't remember. All right, who's got some stables?
I mean, you guys
Stables.
can go
Favorite
first because
stable. I mean, there's Dan and I have the same one because it really is
Yeah.
hard to beat.
it is.
How does anyone top
Generation
this?
X. It's
impossible.
not the first of this version, but it's the better version of it.
Oh, okay. You guys can talk about
It's the
that.
Fortnite to PUBG. It's the because
Yeah.
PUBG started that type of
Right.
thing. In this particular case, NWO came first. And I almost put NWO because the first iteration of NWO was so monumental and changed the face of wrestling forever.
Yeah.
But the way DX was put together, and they were the three, but then it became 6, I think. Yeah, it
I'm gonna say
became
when
5.
2 became 5. When 2 became 5,
6 if
is
you
for
include.
me.
Oh no, because it was
No.
Michaels, Triple H, China, X-Pac,
Oh no, you're right.
Billy
2, you're
Gunn, and
6.
Road
Yeah.
Dogg.
When 2 became 6. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because they stopped. That was what was the important part, is they knew the limit of how big this can get. Whereas the
I'll
NWO
talk about
became
that in a second.
95% of the roster, but DX was 5 people causing fucking chaos as opposed to creating its own company within a company. It was like NWO
right.
versus and it was like Raw and SmackDown, but NWO and Nitro, and it was stupid. But DX, I mean, they did it better and right because they had the more talented people on the mic, and Nash was never good on the mic. Period. Never was gonna be. I don't care who you are. He wasn't the best in the ring, but he had charisma and this essence around him. But X-Pac, who was one of the original members of the NWO, and then came over and they redid their thing. X-Pac is one of my top wrestlers in there.
Dude, I think me and Tim can agree that era of X-Pac. I think he was like he should have been the guy.
He was the man.
He was the most entertaining to watch.
He was.
And George brought this up once, and I never considered it because I wasn't really plugged into the behind the scenes thing during the time. But did Hunter bury X-Pac because he was outshining him? I don't know. Hard to disagree with that fact or opinion or theory. X-Pac was the clear star of that era, and then all of a sudden this moment happened, and it just seemed like he never really quite came back. He did the thing with Kane, another unlikely deal, maybe the coolest entrance you'll see in ever, but X-Pac, man.
Yeah, X-Pac was my guy.
Yeah.
And then Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, one of the most entertaining tag teams out there. Road Dogg, Shake, Rattle, and Roll.
We could all do it like word for word right now if we wanted.
All of them, every DX intro, but we could go for hours. George.
Only other stable, in my opinion, worth even mentioning in the same breath, at least in the last 10 years, is the Shield.
Good.
Three products of FCW turned NXT, consisting of Roman Reigns, who's now the quote unquote man in WWE, kind of, and also Seth Rollins, who is this indie star turned superstar, and now is full reign into whatever he wants to do. Pretty much, he's written his own ticket. Yeah, and he's a fucking workhorse. All 3 of them, and of course Dean Ambrose, who was just this honestly, one would say the forgotten one in the group, but the personality that he had coming out of NXT, and it was all him, dude. When they debuted, it was mostly him doing all the talking. Yeah. If you think about it, and Roman readily admits, he says, "I had no idea what we were doing. I just agreed and said my line after Dean." They would let. Essentially it was set them up, with a few things, and then Dean knocked them down, and then Roman Reigns just swept it up with his one line, and they had a great formula. It'll never ever be the same ever again. And the story of that group is we saw it play through our lives from the beginning to the end, and to see where they are now, and to see the personal growth that they are and the journey that they've all taken. Honestly, I'm very proud of the fact that they came from the NXT machine. It makes me proud and makes me believe that it's good things are ahead, And so because these guys are the guys who came out of that place, and behind it all, that it's a true brotherhood between the three of them, because they went through some really tough times together and come out the other way, and all three of them, honestly, I think are in a better place now than they have ever been, because they're as individuals almost, out of their careers, out of the group, they all struggled for a while. I think easily said, whether it's injuries, whether it's just bad story writing, but now they finally all are where they belong, even though Dean's not in WWE anymore, he's gone through his own personal journey, especially recently, and now he's the Dean that we knew he always could be, and healthier for it as well. So the Shield, I don't know what else to say. From debut to end, wonderful stable. So that's it.
So that brings us to our last little segment here. We are going to do our biggest surprise moments, biggest, didn't see that coming, biggest swerve of the evening. Who's on the list here? Let's go with, these are all good. These are all very intense. These can take a while. I'm not going to go too detailed.
Quick. Mine's quick. So feel free.
Go ahead, Dan.
I mean, I don't even want to talk about mine too much.
That's why you can go first.
I guess we'll go first.
Brock Lesnar breaks the streak. Breaks the Undertaker streak. Fucking heartbreaking. I hate to end on a sour note here, but I mean, it was clear to me they're trying to build a next big bad for what was probably Roman Reigns to take down, a hero to take down the next big bad guy. And it was, and in that sense, it was effective. We were all so stunned and can't believe this fucking part-timer came in and broke, and of all the people to break his streak, he would have been, 50th on the list for me. Not 50th. I don't know. It was believable the way they've built Lesnar, in a way, but none of us wanted it, and it just never felt right. And it felt like robbery. And we wanted someone worthy to break that streak, if at all. I don't think his streak should have been broken, period. But Undertaker is quoted as saying he wanted it to happen, to give someone a moment. Big ups to him. But I mean, I don't think what did this accomplish really? Brock Lesnar was already built as a monster. We didn't need this moment on top of that to add to his reign of terror. Huge surprise for me. Wish they didn't do it. Didn't feel like it was worth it.
Yeah. The more time that passed from that, the more okay I am with it, especially after watching Taker's documentary and everything. He talks about it a lot more in there, but
more okay.
Brock is an interesting beast on its own. You could have a whole thing just breaking down Brock Lesnar.
Ass.
Yeah. My biggest surprise moment for me, which Dan alluded to earlier, was at some WrestleMania. I can't remember. But it was X-Pac was in a match and he was losing, and Triple H and you get Road Dogg and I think it was Road Dogg and Billy Gunn come out first, but they get pushed aside, and Triple H comes out. You're like, yeah, here come the big guns, and then Triple H fucking just gut shot, throws him into the pedigree, drops him on his head. I don't even remember. Honestly, I don't even remember who Pac was up against, but
somebody
it
from
was
the
just
corporation.
It was just the biggest
This one still hurts.
This one still hurts.
That moment of that guy with the really bug eyes sitting at the side of the ring that they keep recapping for the Taker loss.
Yeah,
that was me. That was me, probably sitting in George's basement, or he was at my place. Just pure shock, because it was the biggest thing in wrestling was DX, and then suddenly there was not the biggest thing in wrestling anymore. And my favorite guy at the time just got betrayed by like the leader of this. Oh my god, it was just. It was heartbreaking.
This was when me and Tim started really watching it regularly together, and we were like bought in. And I found out that Tim really enjoyed wrestling, and we were talking about DX, and we were like watching it regularly, and it fucking broke our hearts. I was like, well,
brutal.
To this day,
is it better to go ahead?
No, go ahead. I'm done.
Is it better to go out with a bang, or is it better to burn out and fade away? And the answer to me is it's better to go out with a bang, to end while you're still impactful. But man. Fuck, that was just
a way to go out for sure.
It is. It and that cemented their legacy, and I respect it. But just from a storytelling perspective, from a younger fan's perspective, it was, to me, to this day, the most heartbreaking moment in wrestling. Just the coolest fucking group, and the top guy, returning on his what to me was the best wrestler at the time. Just was sucked. Like, well, how do you move forward from this? The fucking the intro for the New Age Outlaws from that point, it just wasn't the same. Yep. And it left a small little hole in my little wrestling heart. But that gives props to it, how impactful it was.
How impactful. It was really well done. I think to this day, a lot of heel turns try to get to that, and it never seems to have measured up. A lot of friendship
the
turns from Tommaso Ciampa to
Shield.
Very
didn't
close
feel
to
like
that.
Quite as impactful, but
I always thought it was interesting because what was good about the Shield was that you always knew one of them was going to betray the other, right? And when you had the bets going, you always thought it was going to be like Dean Ambrose. And maybe Roman Reigns, because we all knew he was the handpicked Vince favorite and most likely to become a company man. You never thought it was going to be Seth Rollins, because Seth had the character of like the little and he was cool also because you knew him from ROH, and he was the NXT champion. So you never thought of Seth. So that's one
proverbial
of the
middle child. Seth Rollins,
exactly.
Least suspecting.
Happy to please everyone, but. To this day, no heel turn, no surprise kind of measures up to that kind of moment where it was a heel like that.
We didn't see it coming. They were at least teasing it with the Shield, but we didn't. I did
not see this coming. I did not see this coming. DX was at its height. DX was at its height.
And with the Shield, they teased it a little bit. They teased some dissension within the Shield.
They did.
They did. So
you could tell Dean was unhappy, because he wasn't getting his dues or whatever.
Right.
George,
I'm excited for
my final note is it's funny because we didn't even really talk about it. We only touched on him a little, but essentially my favorite swerve moment involves John Cena actually and Mark Henry. Mark Henry, who is from the Nation of Domination, talk about stables, world's strongest man,
Sexual
a real
chocolate.
life, went through a phase called sexual chocolate, but now was Mark Henry, real life world's strongest man, once holding the record. And always has kind of played either a really goofy funny guy but more recently, when this moment happened, had been playing kind of a big squash bad monster guy, which fits his personality fine, especially his movesets. But from all accounts and stories backstage, one of the most lovable, like just biggest giant teddy bear, right? And you knew that was his real personality, despite the character he played on the screen. So this random Monday Night Raw, he comes out, and there have been rumors that this guy was going to address the audience, and you're like,
he's had an illustrious, by the way.
I think we were, and he had an illustrious career, and we were all expecting, from what we heard about the announcement, it sounded like he was about to retire, and it seemed like it was the right time for him to do. So his music comes out, people are coming, he comes down the ramp, he's wearing a pink salmon suit, okay, which it's a full suit, and he has a tie on, and people are expecting him to retire. And people were chanting sexual chocolate, and he's laughing and he's playing it up with the the crowd and stuff like that. And during his kind of speech talking about his career, John Cena comes down and thanks him and all that. And John Cena is the world champion at the time, and they had gone through their storyline, I think the previous months or whatever, but they were done. The match was over, and their storyline had kind of moved on from each other. But it was kind of like Mark's last chance to win a championship, and he didn't get it, and he's ready to retire. So Cena, out of respect, puts the world championship on him to thank him, you know, to give him a moment to hold his belt that he once held and, you know, have this final goodbye. And, you know, he says to John, oh, you know, I'm good. Like, I don't, you know, I'm going to like hold it for a second, but I'm going to give it back to John because I'm like never going to be the superstar that you are, John. And he gives John one last hug and then turns it into the world's strongest slam and slams this guy flat in the middle of the ring and turns full heel. Was like, no, you think this is over? Blah, blah, blah. Oh,
good.
Just did not expect it. Like, Oscar-worthy of performance.
He was crying
in the middle of the ring.
Yeah,
he was crying in the middle of the ring. You thought his career was over.
Watching it, I was getting a little misty.
I was crying.
Okay, you know, I mean, it felt bad for him, and I was like, this is a beautiful moment.
I thought he was never going to get that moment where he got to have the championship one last time. You know,
I've never been swerved like that in my life watching wrestling. Like
in anything.
Yeah.
Anything. Nothing has swerved me like that.
Oh my god.
Can you think of something else that has like made you cry and then completely reversed that feeling within like seconds? Nothing.
Dare I say
nothing.
There hasn't been that good of an acting job in WWE before.
For a long time before that point, yeah.
Yeah. That wow. Why it made me wonder, were we missing out on a Mark Henry kind of like promo like kind of skill set? Like, I feel like we didn't see a lot from him, and that was probably one of the greatest swerves.
What if it was a shoot?
Greatest.
What if he was like supposed to retire and then didn't, and then they're like, what the fuck?
No.
What are we doing?
That would have been funny
on so many levels, but that probably wasn't it.
And John was the man, you know. John was the man, and you always knew John. You know, John. Say what you want about him. He mad respect for those who came before him, and you could tell he had a lot of respect for Mark because they did put on a good program before that, you know. And it just seemed like this was Mark's swan song, like it was over.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh God, what a good moment though.
Yeah.
But you were like, you were like, get him, Mark. Like, let's go one more time.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't that great, but it's fine. It's whatever.
Another big dude.
Big dudes are the big dude.
We have been going on and on and on and on for seems like days. That was our wrestling 2-part episode, and it had its ups, its downs, and then everything in between. We talked, we listened, and learned something new about stuff. Yeah, we laughed and cried. We had a good time. Hey. Again, thank you all for coming out, and those of you who stuck through and watched all of this back to back, troopers. Shout out to any of you. I think Frosty, if Frosty's still in in there, that is props. #1 supporter right
Listen
there.
Listen to us rant.
You know, again, thank you all for watching, and please make sure to click that subscribe button, get the bell on for the new episodes and everything. Catch me, the Modern Nerd, on everything, on nerd_modern on Jesus, we haven't talked in a while. Twitter is nerd_modern. You'll be able to see more. If you have any ideas for more episodes that you want to hear, please throw them in the comments. If you're on with us live, throw them in the chat. We are happy to get more ideas. If you are a creator, if you are someone who's in an industry, whether it's comic books, video games, movies, art, anything like that, let me know. I want your story. I want to hear it. We want to get you on here and get your voice heard. Other than that, Sergeant's Merchandise, I believe, on Instagram.
Just merchandise.
Merchandise, excuse me. I apologize.
He's retired from the army.
Right. And what is it? GJC 327. As always, the gracious host right here on his Twitch channel. And check out his YouTube if you want some more tutorials. I was checking that out the other day. That is intense. I love it. All his socials, GJC 327. We have been the Modern Nerd. As always, thank you for coming.
Thank you.